YouTube, good morning. Welcome back to Lincoln Logs TV. Hope everybody's having a great day. Coming at you from the beautiful, very snowy, very cold, stupid cold Indianapolis, Indiana. So today we got a little bit of a different project. It's so cold outside. We haven't been able to work the last couple days, and it's supposed to be like this through the weekend and early into the week. So we're kind of sitting for a few days. I don't want my guys getting frostbite, and we don't have a ton of inside work right now, so we're kind of on hold with a little bit of that stuff until the middle of next week. But I just came from my tile supplier, but I didn't buy tile there. So what I got was pallets. So my tile, the place I buy my tile gives me all the pallets I want. Today what we're going to do is we're going to take some pallets, take them apart, put them back together, and we're going to make a wooden flag. All right. After I repainted my office a few weeks ago, I kind of have a void behind my door area that just is screaming for some kind of decoration or something. So I'm going to make a rustic style wooden flag of the state of Indiana. I'm from Indiana. I was born and raised here. I've always lived here, but yeah, I'm gonna make a flag. So let's look and see what these pallets look like here, folks. So if you see, these are big old nasty dirty pallets, right? See there, they got snow and ice on them. I'm melting them off with my heater right now, but so I just got two. I don't need more than that. So I'm actually gonna disassemble these things. I'm gonna use the cribbing part, the big heavy wide part. See that, how wide that is? I'm going to use that for my framing, and then I'm going to use the slats as the face of my flag. Glue them together and a couple pen nails. So we're going to get these things taken apart real quick, and we're going to make our pieces on our big bad table saw and get this thing warmed up today and get it a little couple hours of action today. So this is one of those things that's virtually free to do it. You're going to need a little bit of stain and some paint maybe, or paint. No, you don't have to stain. I'm going to stain the base of mine, the base blue, and then I got a big stencil here. This thing's pretty cool. I got this big old stencil on. It's the flag of Indiana. It's hard to see, but yeah, so I got that on Amazon. It's, it was like 15 to 18 bucks. It's plastic. I can reuse it. So let's get this thing rolling. We'll get this thing disassembled, and we'll get our parts stacked up and see what we need and how we're going to assemble it. Stick around. All right, so we have all of our pallets taken apart. It wasn't easy. I knew these things are a pain in the butt. They're usually made out of red oak, and these are very tight grain, really holds a nail. So I ended up, instead of breaking the boards, I didn't want to break them because I want to keep them and use them for the flag. I ended up getting my Sawzall with a good metal blade and cutting them out. This is our cribbing here. So these are our pieces that we're going to use for the actual perimeter frame. And then we'll take our other pieces here. You can see. So those are all our slats that we're going to use for the face of the flag. So I've got plenty of that. That's like double the amount that I need. So I'll pick out the choice boards from that one. I'm going to look for the rustic ones, the ones that are grayed out pretty well and not broken up real bad. So I'm going to make those into the face of the flag, and then I'll be painting that. And then these bad boys, I'm going to end up making into my frame for the flag. A couple of things. I've got a really nice table saw over there that I do a lot of work with. But the reality of it is that there's so many nails in this, I'm not going to run it through that blade. That's like an $85 or $95 saw blade. I've got a real crappy saw, this little teeny, we call it a throw around saw, back of the truck saw. It's a little crappy skill table saw. I need to straighten these out. They're only going to be about an inch wide, so I need to get the curve, the bow out of these things. So I'm going to draw some straight lines and get my my crappy saw set up on top of my extended table out there. Get these cut into pieces and make the frame, and then I'll do the slats after that, and I might edge glue those together to keep the seams, the gaps down. But I don't want to use a really good saw to cut these things into pieces, because it's going to go through 20 or 30 nails per board, and there's 4 of them. So I'm going to use the old crappy saw with the old crappy blade and just kind of burn through those nails with that while I'm not risking damage to my good saw. So I'm going to set that up and get that cut in there. So here's my pieces. I haven't cut the length You can see they're just, I just made them 1.5 inches. It's all it was, real simple. They're not pretty. I don't want them pretty. The key to this project is finding using the imperfections to your advantage, meaning the less perfect it is to some degree, the better it's going to look. So the perfection is in the imperfection of the material here. So I have a stencil here. You can see the big plastic stencil I got off of Amazon. It's just a flag of Indiana. I'm going to make my frame from here, the inside of this little stencil mark, all the way over to the other side of this stencil mark, and the inside of this one all the way up to the top. So that's going to be my finished frame. I'm going to make my actual frame that size, and then I'll just be able to lay this down. I don't want the stripes on the outside. It's not a bad looking detail. I just want the emblem in the middle of the flag. So I'm going to get these things cut to length and pre-assembled and see how it looks on my stencil, and then I'll start cutting my wood slats. All right, so you'll notice in the time lapse, I did place and trace. I didn't really measure much. I don't like to measure unless I absolutely have to. Placing and tracing is always more accurate. It gives me a better just orientation. It lets me write on the pieces what's what and where it is. So I place and trace everything and just cut at the length. I did set this up to where you can see where I ripped it down. You can see the live or the raw edge there. It looks fresh. And then you see the weathered edge. That's the way I want to orient this frame so that it's on the outside. So I'll put my slats over the face of this. You can see all the way down there. So when you're looking from the side, you see the weathered edge. This one has printing on it. I kind of like that. It's kind of cool. I'm going to stain the whole thing a really dark, heavy blue, the Indiana blue, and then I'll put the paint on it after that. But I want to make sure the weathered edge is stuck out as best as possible. I do have some butt ends that are exposed that have been cut like this. I'm going to put those on the top. I'll put those on the top of the flag, on top of the frame, because it's going to be up off the ground about 5 or 6 feet, so you won't be able to, unless you're a huge basketball player, you won't be able to stand over it and look down and see the cut edge. It'll still be stained, but it'll look different than the weathered edge. So I want to orient that. All right, so I'm going to assemble this very simply. It's going to be 4 screws. You can see I'm using a finished, see if I can get a new focus on there. Yeah, the camera's goofy today. It's a exterior finished trim screw. I'm going to pre-drill these because I don't want them to split. So I'm going to pre-drill them, and I'm going to put one screw, just one simple screw in each corner on all 4 sides, and then I'm going to use my slats to square the frame up, and I will pin nail that into place so you can't see the nails at all. So yeah, so let's get that assembly going. Right? Okay folks, so we've got all our pieces cut for the frame. I went ahead and cut and dry fit all of my slats. Here's what it looks like. All right, it's not clean. It's not supposed to be. It's actually wet. I've got to let it dry out before I can put any finishes on it. But you can see I've got a few cut ends here on both sides. What I'm going to do is, there's a little trick. I've got some gray stain in stock, like just in my paint locker. I'll use some gray stain and put it on there. I'm going to stain this entire thing dark blue. The Indiana flag, you can see here. I'm going to lay this on there and get this thing set up. So it lays on there like that. The flag is like a yellow gold. The emblem is yellow gold, and the background of it is usually dark blue, like a real heavily, not a navy blue. I'm sure there's a specific color. It's almost like a cornflower, deeper cornflower color. I don't know. I'd have to ask my wife what color it is. She's good with that stuff. But you can see it lines up perfectly with my edges here and here. So I didn't want that stripe on there. So this is going to line up. Now what I'm going to do is I've got to rip down this top board up here. I've got to rip it to height. See, it's overhanging, but it's an imperfect piece, so it's going to take a little bit of work. What I want to do is I'm going to attach all these boards and get them lined up first. I'm going to use PL construction adhesive and some simple little what we call needles. They're actually pin nails. They're really small. They're virtually invisible, just to hold them in place. I put a nailer down the middle. You can see a little nailer down the middle just for some structure to nail to. But I'm going to go ahead and set all these. Then I'll take this one off, rip the length down, and then I'll go ahead and put that piece in as well. But you can see, look, there's nail holes. I actually left some nails in it just for character. This thing, it's pretty rustic looking. It looks like a pallet board. I mean, it looks like a pallet thing. But once I get it finished, what I'll do is I'll put the stain on it, let it dry overnight, then I'll paint the yellow on it. the yellow of the logo up there, all the torch and all the stars, and I'm going to then put a matte finish over it to protect it, to keep it from moving and absorbing moisture. So when it's inside, it's not moving and expanding and contracting. That red oak, it doesn't move nearly as much as like pine does, but it still will move a little bit with the weather changes. So, all right, so the next step is to get that to get those boards glued down and tacked down, and then I'm gonna get that top piece ripped down, and then I've got to let it dry. I think I'm gonna have to let it dry overnight. I've got my heater going in here, but out in the shop, but it's really this stuff's still soaking wet. I've had it on the heater for 2 hours in here, but it is what it is. It's got to dry before I can put stain on it. So I'll run and pick up stain. It's lunchtime now. Hell, it's almost noon. So I'm gonna run and grab some food, get some lunch. I'll pick up the stain and get let this thing dry out a little bit and see if I can get some stain on it later today. Stay tuned. It's hard to beat the feel of a hand plane on wood. That's really just, that motion is just satisfying and just very therapeutic for a guy like me. So it's, yeah, I had to break out the hand plane. My router bit was too short. The cutoff bit was too short for that wood, but the wood was just a little bit too thick. So it was just burning and it wasn't gonna cut it real well. So I put it on the table saw, ripped off 90% of it, and then I followed the contour of that top frame with that. Top frame's a little bit curved, which is okay. Again, the imperfection is the perfection in this project. So yeah, so hand plane. I don't get to use this very often. That was kind of nice. All right, that's it. So that's our basic shape. That's our basic formwork for this thing. This is the shape it's gonna be when I hang it on the wall. Now what I have to do is I'm gonna get my gray stain, and I'm gonna, all the cut off ends of this thing, I'm going to stain with a little bit of gray and let it dry overnight. Then I picked up my blue stain this afternoon. I'm gonna stain the whole thing gray and let that dry overnight, and then I'm gonna put the yellow logo on over the top of it. I think it's gonna be pretty cool. It's turning out pretty nice. It's really rustic looking. I mean, it looks like an old pallet. All right, so look, you can see I got all my ends stained up. They're pretty dark now. It's not too bad. The red and the white oak stained very differently. The white looked almost perfect, almost a perfect match. The red it's red oak. It's hard to get anything to stain to match on. So I'm gonna let this dry tonight. It's about 5 o'clock. It's about time to knock off. So I'm gonna let this sucker dry tonight. And once it's dry in the morning, and I'm gonna stain the whole thing blue. It's gonna be kind of messy. But I got my blue stain. I picked up my blue stain this afternoon. And then I'll let that dry for several hours. And then I'm going to put my logo on it and paint it almost road hazard yellow. Looks like a yield sign or something like that. It's kind of funky. So, stick with it. I'm coming right back, and we're gonna stain this bad boy in the morning. All right, so it's the next morning. I'm back. I messed with the stain a little bit last night that I got at Sherwin-Williams, and it was way too gray. It's hard to find a blue stain, trust me. So I'm gonna make my own, and it's not really stained, but I'm sure a lot of you heard of the term whitewashing. That's just a thin down white paint that is usually tempered with water, and it makes it real thin and semi-transparent, and it really absorbs in the wood. So that's what I'm gonna go here. I went and got a quart of blue super paint from Sherwin-Williams this morning, and I'm gonna put about maybe a third of that paint into this thing, and I'm gonna start adding a little bit of water and get my color mix. It's probably gonna be a lighter blue, but it's gonna be pretty faded, and that's kind of the look I'm going for. Yeah, that's gonna work. So it's gonna darken up a little bit as it absorbs in there and absorbs some of that gray and brown. Yeah, I'm gonna go with that. All right, so that's my mix. And when I'm doing this, I'm gonna keep stirring it and make sure the water is balanced in there, but I'm gonna set my flag up here, my piece up here, and I'm gonna get this thing painted. Now you remember, I'm doing all 6 sides, so top, bottom, left, right, and the face. So I'm gonna start on the sides and just see how it ends up. So I mixed up my yellow paint. I actually had to let the board, the actual piece, dry overnight. It just wasn't drying very quickly out here. My shop office is pretty cold. It's like 6 degrees outside. So I left the heater on a little bit yesterday evening, let it warm up in here, and had to let it sit overnight to dry. No big deal. So I'm back the next morning. I've got my stencil taped down, so I just used blue painter's tape and put it in place and kind of centered it and lined it up and make sure it's where I want on my board. I went ahead and mixed up my yellow paint. I did the same thing I did with the blue. I created a wash instead of just straight paint. It's pretty yellow, you can see there. You guys see that? It's pretty yellow. It's real runny. I want it rustic. I'm using a good paintbrush on this part. I need to be a little more accurate with it than I could be with that big giant chip brush that I was using before. So I'm going to get this stuff applied. This is the last step. I don't think I'm going to put any kind of urethane over the top of this thing. It's going to be sitting in my office. I want it wooden and rustic and old looking. I want it to look like it's 100 years old. So, so let's get this stuff applied and wrap this sucker up. All right, so we're applied. Our yellow's on there. I think it looks pretty good. I'm gonna give it about 5 minutes, let it set up a little bit. I'm gonna pull off that stencil. I don't want it heavy paint. It's a little bit brighter than what I thought it was gonna be, but I think it's gonna kind of absorb into the wood a little bit more and really soak up and kind of fade it out. But I actually considered at one point doing a really light color blue, like much lighter than this, and a super bright yellow just to make it pop off there. But I ended up not messing with that. So I'm okay. This is kind of a good mix of that. So let's get the stencil off, see what it looks like. Okay, so I'm done with this thing. So it didn't turn out perfect. Again, the imperfection is the perfection of this project. As you can see on here, the Indiana part really bled over together. You can see it up there at the top. Indiana, it's hard to see what that is, but the rest of it's not bad. It had a little bleed through right here, but again, I'm not mad at this thing. Again, the imperfection is the perfection on this bad boy, so I'm really happy with the way it turned out. It's gonna look really cool hanging in my office. So let's talk about some of the things we've learned here, some of the lessons in this project. One, pallets are cheap. You can get pallets for free almost anywhere, behind home centers, behind malls, shopping center, all the back alleys you can find them. Just go in and ask. Go into the store and make sure you ask for permission. You really only need one good one. I got two because I knew some of the boards are going to be in rough shape. All right. Number two, when you're working with pallet wood, perfection is very difficult to come by. None of the boards are straight. None of them are the same thickness. So you have to work with that. All right. You have to be able to be willing to make and shape your piece to what you need, which is what I did here. There's some curve to some of these frame pieces. The face pieces, the actual flat slats are not perfect. There's some gaps in there. There's some nail holes there. I left some nails in there. You saw where I had to hand plane down the top to get it even with the top rail. It's an imperfect process, and you just have to learn to roll with that. All right. Third, the finishes on this were a bit more challenging than I thought. The blue, I thought I was going to be able to use stain, and that just wasn't going to work. I ended up making my own blue wash, which is like whitewash, and then I ended up making my own yellow wash. The stencil process, I probably made the paint, the wash too wet, and it bled through on some of those. The unevenness of my boards, the different thicknesses across that horizontal flat plane, that kind of played with the contact surface of my stencil, and I couldn't get it all the way down, so wherever it was sticking up, it bled over. Not a big deal. Again, imperfect was the perfect here on this thing. So appreciate you guys logging in and watching Lincoln Logs TV. I have a lot of fun making these things, little projects like this, big projects that we're going to be working on, and sharing that with you guys. It's just kind of fun. It keeps me a little more entertained throughout the day, and I get to plan some things. I've got one coming up with my wife. My wife is going to be featured in a video on how to fix some drywall. It's pretty simple, but we're going to do a kind of a walkthrough and coaching session with her. So appreciate you guys logging on. Hope you have a great warm weekend, and see you guys on the next one.